Hey Patrick, good morning and welcome to today's vlog series. How are you doing today?
Hi, all good. Thanks, KJ. So today we want to have a look on how to install and to configure the latest ITSM connector of Omnissa within ServiceNow.
Yes, Patrick. And it is very simple for any of our customers who want to go and have a look at the application. Just go to the store, store.servicenow.com, and here search for Omnissa. And if you have logged into the ServiceNow store using your ServiceNow support credentials, you will see the Omnissa Workspace ONE ITSM Connector application. And then you hit the get button, after which the application is available on your ServiceNow instance. And that is how you begin the journey.
Once you have clicked on Get and you have that available and you assigned it to your environment, you can then move to the ServiceNow instance where you can see the version of ITSM connector you want to install.
So there are two ways of searching it. Most of our customers will see it under the plugins section. So if they go here and if they have downloaded the application by clicking the get button over there, they will go here and again look for Omnissa and find the application here. Obviously, since this instance is Omnissa's own instance, so we do not get it externally. We get it from the My Company applications. But in most of the cases, it will be available under the plugin section. So go to plugin, search for Omnissa, and if you have downloaded the application from the store, you will start to see it here. Applications. And now this is the application that we are developing. So I'm going to do install and wait for some time for the application to actually install on my instance. Remember, from the ServiceNow store, once you click get, the application is available on your ServiceNow instance. And then once the application becomes available in your ServiceNow instance, then you go to the plugins and from there you install the application. So it is a two-step process, Patrick.
Yep. In the meantime, while we are installing it, we can have a look and create the service account on the UEM side as well as the service account on the intelligence side. Let's start first with UEM. So in this case, I'm logged in at Omnissa Connect. I have my UEM environment here. So let's quickly open that whenever we are logged in. We can go to groups and settings, and this is in SaaS environment, so we will use OAuth. If you have an on-prem UEM environment, you need to go with basic auth, but as we go with OAuth, so quickly typing in OAuth client management, just click that, and there we have an add button. This is where we add the new client, and let's just give it a name. Let's say demo, and just give it also a description. Make sure you select the right organization group, in this case, the top level. So it's this one. And just make sure that the permission is right. If you have a custom role, you can do that as well. I just use here in this case console administrator and make sure it's enabled. So let's click to save. And then it's getting generated. So you see now that the client ID is here and also the client secret that we can copy out that we will later use for the UEM part. Make sure that you don't mix up UEM and intelligence. So this is for UEM. This is the client ID. This is the client secret that I can copy out on that.
So Patrick, if a customer were to forget the client secret or they were to have it misplaced somehow, is there a way for them to retrieve the client secrets from the OAuth client management menu item?
So no, if you didn't copy it out from here and all that, it is not showing you the client secret again. But you can just create um, a new client, register that, and just update the things on that. That's not an issue.
Okay. And if a customer has more than one UEM tenants, how do they go about it?
Yes, you need to create that for every single UEM tenant. So in every tenant, you create your client ID and client secret. And yes, we can add multiple, up to 5 UEM environments in the ServiceNow side. While we have here generated that for the UEM side, we also will then have a look on the side of the intelligence. For intelligence, I'd quickly go back to Workspace ONE Intelligence. It takes some seconds. There's an integrations. And if you're licensed on Experience Management, the Intelligence add-on, or Enterprise, you will see here ITSM connector that you can set up. Keep in mind that if you're not licensed for that, you need to create an account under the accounts, service accounts, and there you can create one.
Yeah, what is the difference? That's what I'm trying to understand.
So the difference is that this client ID here can only read, so it will read the experience data from that, while the other one in integrations, we have the option of also getting usage data of the ITSM connector, as well as we get incident data reported to intelligence. So let's take that one in this case. Click here to set up. Then it says get started. It shows you that it will read experience data and ingest ServiceNow incident data. And then click on download credential and let's download it. Let me quickly show the JSON file. As you can see here, this is the client secret. This is the client ID that is generated here, as well as the token endpoint is with that one. So also that is that's what we need on the ITSM connector side now to then configure that.
Right, Patrick. And how did we get to this JSON file?
So this is exactly what is coming down from the download, right? So this is what we just downloaded on that. So this is the JSON file that was now coming down with the downloads.
Okay, so what you're saying is that if we go to the ITSM connector tile here and click on setup like we just did, automatically a client ID, client secret credential set will be downloaded in the form of a JSON file. Is that right?
Correct.
And now this client ID, client secret set can be used both to read experience scores as well as to export ServiceNow ticket data out of ServiceNow and into intelligence to create some sort of dashboards.
Yes, exactly. That's why we use that one. In this case, I'm enterprise licensed, so I have that all available. In case of you don't have that, if you're on essentials only without add-ons, you need to go really to accounts, service accounts, and here you can create a service account. You give it a name, create that client secret, and have that then available. Also, the token URL is in the service accounts. If you see that here, it's showing up here as well. So that's later on the token ID, the token endpoint that we need for that. And the URL that we need later on for the API is also listed in the JSON file. But there's also a page of the documentation that we can show in a second. So let us quickly have a look on intelligence. And I'm here on that Frankfurt region, so EU1 as we saw. So we see that the API.EU1data. That one is the URL, so we can see that. And so we know that what the URL of the API is in this case. And then the same is available for URLs that we need for the UEM functionality on UEM side. The REST API is this one. So you see here OAuth also there. If you know the data center, I'm in EU1 Germany, so I see then what the URL is for the token auth. So we need to note down the token URL. We need to note down the UEM URL, which is the API URL that we see here as well, which is basically the URL of the environment /API with the right URL on that. And then we can get started with configuring it on the ServiceNow side. KJ, how far are we with the installation?
About 99% done. We're almost there. All right. So now that the application has installed, let's go and start to configure it. So, okay, here we go. So now the Workspace ONE ITSM connector is available. I'm going to add it to my list of favorites and begin the first step. I will go into the setup page. And the setup page is basically a series of about 5 or 6 steps that have to be done sequentially. And most of it is about gathering the information from UEM, gathering the information from intelligence, and plugging it into ServiceNow. So here, these are my 5 tasks, basic tasks to configure the application. The first one is to add either the OAuth credentials or the basic credentials, validate it, then configure the OAuth credentials for intelligence and validate it. And then my piping is complete. So this is where I have to add the host, the client ID, the client secret, and the token URL. So Patrick, can you show us in UEM where we can get these 4 fields so that I can then add it into the ServiceNow ITSM connector?
Yes, let us go back to UEM. So, and let's start with, and as I'm still on that screen where we created that, let's just directly copy out that client secret. So let's just copy that. There's a copy button and paste that down, right? So we just start with the client secret. Then we start with the client ID, just copying that out as well, putting that in the client ID of UEM. The token URL for UEM, that's something that we get out of the documentation. So let's just quickly go to that documentation of UEM, where we see, as I said, I'm hosted in Frankfurt, Germany. So I can just copy out that token URL from here.
And the token URL is going to be different based on the data center where your UEM is hosted. Is that right?
Correct. This is depending on the data center and the region where it is hosted in SAS. Correct. So to make sure that you have here the right region and data center selected, and then you get the token URL out of that. Correct. So whenever we have done that, let's just quickly close that, go to groups and settings, all settings, and then there is on the system advanced site URLs where we get the API URL. So this is the REST API URL that we need. In this case, it's this one. So just copying that out.
And Patrick, I just noticed that the API URL is slightly different from the UEM web address that you have opened. What is the difference between the two?
Correct. By default, there's CN for console for the GUI, while AS is used for the API services. So that's why it's different, but as you may have a custom URL as well. Make sure that you really check it in the site URLs, that you have the right URLs available. So as we have now these things available and can use that for UEM, let's quickly go back to you, KJ, and fill that out in our environment.
Okay, copy that. So the first one is the OAuth host detail. I'm going to configure it. And we will notice that, in fact, the active button is set to false because by default, basic is set to true and OAuth is set to false. So first I will activate it and then I will add the host. I will not add the complete host because as you see, the URL builder is enabled. So I'm just going to do it. Remove the cache API and remove the first parts from host and update. Now I get a warning saying that you want to use basic authentication or you want to use OAuth credentials. Which one do you want to use? Are you sure with OAuth? Yes, I'm sure. And that is the first one. Then comes the next 3, the client ID, client secret, and token URL. So configure again. All right, so that is the client ID that you had shared. This is the client secret. Okay, and the token URL is the one that we got from the documentation, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. So changing that. And this is the format. So after token, there is nothing at the end, grant type, auth credentials, all of that does not exist. So this much is done. Now I have the client ID, client secret, the token URL, and in the previous step, I had also added the host API URL. So now this is done. Now for customers who want to configure additional credentials, they can go from here and then configure up to 5 UEM tenants with a single instance of ServiceNow. But for this, I'm just going to go to the next step and validate and check whether the credentials are proper or not. So the first thing I'm going to check is the client ID and client secret along with the token URL. And I do that by doing the verify OAuth token button. Now, because this succeeds, it tells me 3 things. One, that the client ID is proper. The second, the client ID client secret pair can be shared with the token URL and a token is generated successfully, which is why the verify OAuth token works. Now I go to the second part, and here is where I test the token that was recently generated with the API URL and check if my actual connectivity is established or not. It is always recommended, and there we go. So this part works. It is always recommended if there is an error in the first part, you check the client ID, client secret, token URL. If in the first part there is an issue, there is nothing you can do about the host. Just fix or verify, or easiest way is to regenerate these two. And if this works and this fails, it basically means that your OAuth credentials are not good for the URL. It means either there is something wrong with the credentials entirely, or they are working and generating the right token, but that token is not able to authenticate with the host. In most cases, if the test connection is failing, but the verify OAuth token succeeds, it means there is something wrong. Usually something is wrong with the URL, and so you might want to check or fix this part. But for now, our UEM connectivity is established with ServiceNow. Now let's go to the second part and configure the intelligence pieces. Patrick?
Yep. Exactly. Let's quickly switch back to our token that we have downloaded from intelligence, and let me quickly share that. So we have here now downloaded that JSON file, and in the JSON file we see the API URL, which is called API base URL. So we just copy that one out, as this is the API URL. The token URL is here as well with the token endpoint, and making sure that it doesn't have the grant type in. So just after the token, that's the token URL, as well as the client ID and the client secret. As we see, the client ID is this one. So let's copy over the client secret.
Right, Patrick. I was just going to check, but all 4 of these values are available in the JSON.
Correct. If you use the JSON, everything is available there. If you use the service account, you see the token auth URL on top of it, and you see the API URL. Just make sure that it has the API in front of it, or look in the documentation for that. Correct.
Okay.
So, and with that, yeah, let's copy that and over, and then you can use that.
All right. Thanks, Patrick. A little bit back and forth, but the whole process takes maybe about 10 to 15 minutes, as we have done so many times, right? This is just the explanation, which is taking a bit longer. Anyway, validating the UEM connection details is complete. So now I go back and configure the second half, which is the OAuth host details. And so for that, let's configure the first part for intelligence, and I need the URL. This is my API URL.
Yep. Also here, make sure that you don't have any HTTPS in, so it's really just the host. And you see it on the connection URL as well. So in this case, we have to delete the HTTPS in front of it.
Yep. And what I usually do is, once I update this value, I just go back and check what is the value that is being created. So here now this is the API URL, which is exactly what we required. Alternatively, some customers remove the URL builder as well. You can do that if you want. So now coming to the second part, which is the client ID, client secret, and token URL. Okay. And the client secret. Okay. And the token URL.
Yep. Make sure here that the token URL has the HTTPS in front and ends with /token, as it is already here in that sample. So we just copy that out from the list that we had and put in the token URL in that.
All right, just in case. Update. Now, again, same thing holds true if I want to go and configure additional intelligence instances. I do it from here, and then I have to basically map the UEM with the intelligence. Go to validate, intelligence connection details, and verify. Okay, now this again means that the client ID, client secret, and the token URL, these three are the correct ones. And finally, if I do a test connection, I will be checking whether the token generated through these three is able to validate itself with the Workspace ONE intelligence URL. So test connection, yes, that works through as well. Now the only last thing I must do is I have to configure the UEM to intelligence mapping. Okay, I need to do that only during multi-tenancy, so scratch that. And now I'm good to go. So if I open an incident, let's open it from here and create a new incident. Say laptop is not connecting with corporate Wi-Fi. Okay, and I select the caller. Any caller will do. And save. And now we will notice that within the incident page, as a result of the integration that is available, we have the Workspace ONE ITSM Connector tab. So clicking on the tab, or rather the button, and then that is what activates our Workspace ONE ITSM Connector. Okay, and at the moment, there were no devices associated with this user. The user is here. So at the moment, Ali Humphrey does not have any devices in UEM. So what we are going to do is we are going to do a username based search. So I can go ahead and refine the search criteria. And now I have the option of searching UEM from within ServiceNow. So very simple. I go here, and for the time being, I'm going to just give it a blank. And everything within the UEM tenant are then brought back. And I have the details of all of the devices. Now, whether it is a Windows device or an Apple device or an Android device, I can start to manage all of the flavors of various operating systems, various device types from right here. So I select the Windows device. And then I have my basic details like the operating system, the make, model, manufacturer, the serial number, etc., the enrollment status, and then profiles. I can install a profile, remove a profile, reinstall a profile. Similar thing for applications. I can view the certificates. I can push or reprocess products. Suppose there is a product that allows you to fix a vulnerability. You can push that product from right here. And of course, a product has a different meaning in the Workspace ONE world. We'll come to that maybe in another video. And then all of the workflows associated with the device are also mentioned here. You can think of every workflow as either a script or a set of scripts that can be executed from the push of a button without any elevated privileges, without any additional admin access. It can all be done from right here. And then there are device actions as well. What else do we want to see, Patrick?
Let's say we don't want that an admin wants to just say on the UEM tab. So if they don't want to have that someone in the help desk are allowed to wipe a device, so we want to use something like groups for depending on the groups that help desk people are allowed to wipe devices and others are not allowed to wipe devices. So can we change that? Is there an option?
Yes, we absolutely can. And for that, we go to Setup. And here we go to the next configuration, which is to configure actions. So I can configure it in two ways. Either I remove the action entirely. So if let's say I don't want my service desk to do enterprise wipe, I don't want them to do delete device or not even a device wipe. Okay, so I'm just going to remove these three options from here, and then nobody within service desk will be able to see that. So going back to the incident, now if I come here and look at the corresponding device actions, enterprise wipe is gone, delete device is gone, device wipe is also gone. That is one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is to use groups. So coming back to the guided setup and coming back to the second step, which is configure service desk, I can assign roles. Now, each of the actions that we see are assigned to their own individual ServiceNow role. So for example, enterprise wipe has its own role. Similarly, remote assist has its own role, and delete device has its own. So what I can do is I can assign these roles to either users or groups. So let's say I want to assign some roles to a particular group. Okay, so in this example, let's look at field services. And let's add a couple of people in the field services group. Okay, able tutor is one. And let's say Brian Rowell is the other. Okay, so two people. And all that I want the field services teams to be able to do is to just do clear passcodes and remote assist. That's it. So for that, I can look for the right roles. This one allows them to do clear passcode, and the other one allows them to do remote assist. Okay, so two people, they have only two roles. Now, if I impersonate these, so first one was Mr. Able Tutor. So if I log in now as Able Tutor and look at the same incident, and I open the Workspace ONE ITSM Connector tab,
I can only do start assist. As it's a Windows device, there's no clear passcode, right? So that's why there's only the assist button in that case. If it would be an iOS device, yes, then that would be there as well.
right? And because I did not give Able Tutor any of the other permissions, you can see that they are not able to look at any of these tabs. So the tabs then become disabled. Okay. On the other hand, if I increase certain permissions for Able Tutor, and let's just say I want to give him some more. So going back to the guided setup, configure service desk, assign roles, and configure roles to user groups. Field services for the one we're playing with, and roles, edit. And let's say change passcode, lock device, view encryption key, and application install, uninstall. Products and profiles, add and remove, yes. Okay, should be sufficient to show us before and after. So once again, I have updated their roles. Now doing the impersonation once again and going to able tutor, looking at the same incident. And here we go. I have my view encryption recovery key, soft reset. I don't have all of the actions, but I have a little bit more based on the roles that I have provided. So every customer has their own processes. They can pick and choose which ones they want to enable, which ones they want to disable. Most customers start small, wherein they will only allow, let's say, one or two actions to be available, and slowly and gradually, as more and more use cases start to surface and the teams become comfortable with the usage of the ITSM connector, then you can obviously increase the number of actions that are available.
Yeah, so it's not just for globally for everyone. We can also use groups for that. So we can really fully customize it to the needs of the organization, right? So let's
Correct.
have a look on the experience tab, right? So if we want to see some experience data, so let's quickly, in this case, as we saw, we didn't provide the experience data to that role to that person, so it doesn't see it. So let's quickly go back and end the impersonation and go back to our other account and have a look on the experience data of that. So let's click on experience data. So there we will see it has a good score. We see also application crash and hang events, if there are any. You will see the CPU health. If it was booted, last shutdown and boot events, in this case, this device is up since weeks, so it didn't have any boot events and app crash events, but we see what happened within the last 24 hours, and if there were any application hangs and all that, so we have insights on that as well. One, I think we showed here a bit of the basics of the ITSM connector, how to configure it. There are some application defaults that we can configure in the setup. So let's have a look on what we can do on the application defaults. So if we click on that, there's a configure button as well, and there we can define that. What we can do is we can add a note in UEM for every action that we perform on the ServiceNow side, so that you can also keep track on things that happen on ServiceNow on the UEM side for compliance reason and for tracking as well. The other thing that you saw that we have this search, if you are not using CMDB, and you can use that, or CMDB is not in place, you can use that search that's enabled by default. And yeah, we recommend having that enabled. In case of you have multiple environments, the Workspace ONE UEM multi-tenant one is there, so you can enable that, and then you can use multiple UEMs, up to 5 UEM intelligence tenants that can be mapped. Yeah, if you are not using multi-tenant mode, you can then use the intelligence analytics as well. In intelligence analytics means we send data to intelligence. That's what we put it in the token. And for advanced analytics. So we can see what incidents have been opened on the intelligence side, run reports, dashboards, and all that stuff. So this is where you enable that. Whenever you have enabled that, there's also an URL that you need to enter on that. That's also part of the token. So you see this is the events URL that you need to enter here in that case. So it's something with event proxy in it. Exactly, that's the one that gets in here. For iOS, the app name sometimes has a space and sometimes does not have a space in it. So in case of you have some custom configuration here, make sure that this is getting updated to the right name that you're using in that environment. Most of the time it has that space between intelligent and hub, so that's why it's the default value. But in case of you're not having that, just remove that. So you can see that in the console as well under device and user, Apple iOS in the UEM console. And then there's this email validation check, where you can check if the email address is the same than the caller. So if you, for example, have for compliance reasons, you want to make sure that the device mapped in the incident is having the same email address in UEM than in the ITSM tools like ServiceNow, you need to push that or enable that option. And also there is an exception list of email address that can be added manually. This is a semicolon separated list if you want to do that. And then you just save that, and then you have configured that settings.
All right. I think we have seen most of the configurations of the ITSM connector, much
Yes.
more than the regular basic configurations that are required. So I would recommend everyone to use this video to start downloading and installing the ITSM connector, start configuring it, and more importantly, have your service desk to drive efficiencies by reducing the turnaround time of new incidents. Patrick?
So make sure that you get started today and use the benefits of ITSM Connector from Omnissa for ServiceNow.